It's about time to get started. We're going to pick up with Job chapter 28 today. Before we get started, let's have a word of prayer, please. Our Almighty God, our Father in heaven, we thank you for your loving kindness and for the time we have to come together and to look into this book of Job. Help it to strengthen us, help us to improve our relationship with you and better understand it. And we pray that you would be with all the classes and all the teachers today, that your name might be honored in all that's done. Through Christ. Amen. All right, so last week I asked the general question to kick things off: why serve God? And I'm going to ask that again, except I'm going to change how I ask, and I'm going to ask, why do you serve God? And I don't expect you necessarily to answer that, but answer it in your own mind. But do you serve God because of all the good things that He gives you? All the blessings? So you can go to heaven? So you can escape hell? As I think about this, maybe these are all factors, but let's look at Deuteronomy 6 and verse 24 just for a second. We're kind of grabbing a verse in the middle of a thought there. As Moses reminds Israel of all the things God has done. Does somebody have that? Deuteronomy 6, verse 24. Chris, can you read that?
The Lord commanded us to observe all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God for our good always, that He might preserve us alive, as it is this day.
So His statutes, His laws, His commandments, His ways are for what? Our good always. Our good always. And one of the things that I believe, I'm convinced, that Moses is trying to get across to Israel as he reviews the commandments, as he repeats the law, as it were, is that the things God has given you, these are gifts to you. These are things that are for your good. They're gifts to us. So when we think about His commands and His ways, they're not harsh tasks for us. If we commit ourselves to them and learn to mold ourselves in the likeness of God, that's a gift to us. And so in the ultimate sense, it's not just about going to heaven, and again, I don't mean any of this in a flippant way. Certainly, going to heaven means being with God, okay? So that's part of it. But it's not going to heaven so that we get to enjoy this grand place that's like Disneyland all the time. It's so we can be in the presence of everything that's good and right and wholesome and just. There's an old movie, I say old movie, it's probably 30 years ago, that I like, where Robert Duvall's character. Okay, so Robert Duvall just passed. But he gives this speech to young men in this movie. Some of you probably know which movie I'm talking about. And he tells the young men in this speech that things like honor and courage and goodness and love, those are the things worth believing in. That's why you believe in those things, because they're the things that's worth believing, that they're worth believing. And again, I don't want to be trivial with God's Word and compare it too much to a movie, but that's kind of the idea here, is that when we're trained fully in God's ways, we're going to want to be in His presence, and that's the only place that's truly worth being. And so that's why, ultimately, when we are mature, that we want to serve God. All right, so where does that leave us then when things don't go the way that we would like? Where did it leave Job? He had lost everything that he had, physically and even his health. And so his whole lifestyle had been changed, and his friend's answer to his situation was that he's wicked and he needed to change his lifestyle to become righteous. Now, Job in chapter 27 had just told his friends and reminded them, as he had done several times before, that the wicked will get their reward. They're going to get what's coming to them. So he agreed with him on that count. However, based on his previous arguments, his friends needed to understand and be reminded that just because bad happens to somebody, that doesn't necessarily mean that that person is wicked. The just sometimes suffer too, and that's been the thing that he's tried to respond to time and time again. Well, that brings us to chapter 28. Somebody want to read 1 through 11?
Surely there is a mine for silver and a place for gold that they refine. Iron is taken out of the earth, and copper is smelted from the ore. Man puts an end to darkness and searches out to the farthest limit, the ore in gloom and deep darkness. He opens shafts in a valley away from where anyone lives. They are forgotten by travelers. They hang in the air, far away from mankind. They swing to and fro. As for the earth, out of it comes bread, but underneath it is turned up as by fire. Its stones are the place of sapphires, and it has dust of gold. That path no bird of prey knows, and the falcon's eye has not seen it. The proud beasts have not trodden it, the lion has not passed over it. Man puts his hand to the flinty rock and overturns mountains by the roots. He cuts out channels in the rocks, and his eye sees every precious thing. He dams up the streams so that they do not trickle, and the thing that is hidden he brings out to light.
Now, maybe this is an unfair question. 1 through 11, because you really need to keep reading to gain the context of what he's talking about in verses 1 through 11. Nevertheless, what's he talking about in verses 1 through 11 here?
Something.
Okay. And in fact, what kinds of things does man look for, and where does he look for them? Some kind of treasure, earth's minerals that are precious. Kevin and Chris, they spent some time in their youth in Colorado, right? Colorado is one of those states where you have some treasures beneath the earth's surface. And so if you're driving down some of the back mountain roads there, doesn't have to be too back of a mountain road, and you look on a hillside there, on a mountainside, a lot of the time you'll see some shaft in the side of the mountain as you drive along where somebody has tried to go in there and find probably gold, but there's all kinds of other things that you can find in jewels and things like that in certain parts of Colorado as well. And so there's mines that people have set up because people are interested in gaining these precious jewels, these precious treasures, gold, whatever. That's what he's describing here. And man will go to all kind of efforts to reach those things, to dig the shaft and get down to the top of the bedrock there as easily as possible or as quickly as possible so that they can get the gold, which tends to be very heavy and it tends to settle and be on top of the rock. Or other jewels, they'll use water and they'll dig, they'll use water, they'll use all kinds of tools to get to those precious things. But, verse 12, where can man find wisdom? Can man find wisdom in the same way? Turns out finding wisdom is not so easy as finding precious stones and treasures. Those minerals take a lot of effort to get, but yet it can be done. And it's elusive to man to find wisdom in that same way. He can't just go digging for it and using water and shovels and other tools to find wisdom. Wisdom doesn't come from the same place as precious metals and precious minerals. Somebody want to read 12 through 19?
Wisdom be found. And where is the place of understanding? Man does not know its value, nor is it found in the land of the living. The deep says, it is not in me. And the sea says, it is not with me. It cannot be purchased for gold, nor can silver be weighed for its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, in precious onyx or sapphire. Neither gold nor crystal can equal it, nor can it be exchanged for jewelry of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or quartz, for the price of wisdom is above rubies. The The topaz of Ethiopia cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold.
All right. So,
Wisdom is not so easy to find. You can't, even though it takes great effort to find these minerals, you can't do the same things and get wise from it. So, where does wisdom come from then? The question continues. Verse 20. From where then does wisdom come, and where is the place of understanding? It is hidden from the eyes of all living and concealed from the birds of the air. Destruction and death say, we have heard a report about it with our ears. God understands its way, and he knows its place, for he looks to the ends of the earth and sees under the whole heavens, to establish a weight for the wind and apportion the waters by measure. When he made a law for the rain and a path for the thunderbolt, then he saw wisdom and declared it. He prepared it. Indeed, he searched it out. And to man he said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And to depart from evil is understanding. All right, so where does wisdom belong? Verse 28 is the key to it. This is a softball. Everybody can knock this one out of the park. Okay. This wisdom that we would like to find, but we can't find just by mining it, there's one source, and that's God. The Lord's the place to go for our wisdom. Now, what's this speech all about? Job has, in the last chapter, he's talked about the reward that the wicked are going to have. He's already set the stage earlier for the fact that, yes, the wicked will get their reward, but it doesn't always occur on our time frame, and just because you're suffering doesn't mean you are wicked. And then he goes into this discourse regarding wisdom. And so, why is he doing this, do you think? Yeah, Jack.
I kind of think, Job's a pretty smart guy, right, for all of his failings. I think there's kind of, in my mind, a twofold purpose here. On one hand, I think he might be critiquing his friends again in many ways, right? Where is wisdom? Well, certainly not here, right? There, where can I find wisdom? And all his friends who are supposedly wise and counseling him, it's not with you guys that I'm finding it. But I think also it's playing into, his previous question, and again, what he's going to bring up later in this long kind of monologue of his, he's always asking, where is God, right? Where is the Lord that I may speak with him, I may reason with him. And so he brings up this, wisdom is from God. But if the question Job has is, where is God? Then I think he's kind of also bringing along that implied point of, how can I find wisdom if I can't find God?
Okay, that may be part of it. I'm convinced there's a couple of things he's trying to get at here. First and foremost, maybe it's because he's contrasting the wisdom, the true wisdom that comes from God, versus that group of people in chapter 27 that tried to do things that they thought of as wise, but it was going to lead to their destruction. So that's part of the equation I'm convinced of. The other thing, like Jack just said, is maybe there's he's wrestling with, where's God in this, and I want to pursue wisdom, and God's not readily available for me to catch that wisdom, if you will. And then there's an element also, like Jack said, that there's probably a little bit of a suggestion here that you friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, wisdom's eluded you too. He doesn't come out and say that, but that seems to be some of the idea in this. Yeah.
I think at least reading through this has kind of surprised me that the response Job is giving to them seems to parallel the response that God gives to him. Because like in verse 9, he's talking about like the greatness of man. They're strong enough to even overturn a mountain by its roots. But despite all that power, like going to the end of the chapter, they're still not able to find wisdom because it's from God. And then that seems to be kind of like what God's response to Job is later. Like, even though you have this righteousness, even though you're a good person, like you're still nothing compared to God himself. It's that kind of same dynamic.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because you can't help when you read this to be reminded, if you can think on what happens later on when God answers Job, that some of the things that Job is saying here about God's greatness and his ways, that's what God reminds Job of as well. So Job knows the facts of the matter, and yet he hasn't always applied the facts in a way that they should be applied in his responses to his friends. Okay, other comments then on chapter 28. Yeah, Chris.
Chapter 26, where it first starts speaking this round, he mentions in verse 3, how have you counseled one who has no wisdom, and how have you declared sound advice to many? So I think he's also pointing out, kind of going along with what's already been said, that they maybe are not as wise as they are.
Yeah, that seems to be the suggestion in all of this, that wisdom has kind of eluded you, Eliphaz, Bildad, and so far in this whole thing. Sometimes the chapter breaks are not, they're convenient for us, and yet they're not always convenient for our thought process, because sometimes we'll tend to chop up the chapters and the thoughts within without connecting them. So yes, thank you for kind of bringing that together. Okay, so we get to chapter 29, and in chapter 29, Job continues his speech, and how does he describe his state before all this calamity occurred?
His prime.
All right,
All right.
things were good. What did God do in verse 2?
Watched over him.
Okay,
Okay.
what did God do in verse 3?
It's the light.
Yeah, God's lamp shone on my head. Verses 4 and 5 basically is saying God was with me. So God watched over me, his light shone on me, he was with me. What about the latter part of verse 5?
Surrounded by his children.
My children were with me. All right, so he's still hurting. What about verse 6?
It's describing opulence, really. Like it,
Yeah,
you know, these materials, which were at that point in time they were a commodity, really, almost a luxury to have in excess of. I would use them to wash my steps. They were coming out of the rocks for me, oil and butter, right?
The steps were cream and rocks were oil. So very plentiful arrangement here. Things were good with Job. His cup had run over and over, to borrow a thought from the psalmist. So he was in a blessed state. What did he have according to verses 7 through 11? Yeah, he had status and honor in these few verses here. He took his seat in the open square. A little side point here. We remember the virtuous woman of Proverbs 31. And in that chapter, one of the things that's said of the virtuous woman is what her husband did, that her husband sat with the elders, at the gates of the city. And that's a reflection on the virtuous woman, that because of her, her husband was able to be what he is because of what she was. And so here are the same things happening with Job, that he was in a place of honor within the city. He would sit in the open square. And what did young men do?
Quiet.
Yeah, they saw Job, and it says they hid in some of the translations. They were quiet, though. They dared not speak up and be haughty in front of Job, because here's a man of honor, and it was obvious so it was time to not try to shine if you're the young person, to take your seat in the background, hide. What did the aged do?
Frozen stood.
Okay,
so
yeah, there's a respect there. So the young didn't speak out and let their mouths and their opinions be heard. The old did not I mean, they rose with respect. So even those who were considered old and wise, they would stand in respect for Job. Here's the status and the honor that he had. What else? What did princes do and nobles?
They were silent as well when in prison.
They stopped talking too, didn't they? The princes refrained from talking. The voices of the nobles were hushed or hushed. So, ear heard and blessed me. Eye saw and approved me. And so, this is good, a good status. It's a status of honor. And here's why. Because, all right, so these things all happened because here was Job's character. And so in the following verses, verse 12, what did he do?
Those in need.
He delivered the poor. He delivered the fatherless, the one who had no helper. When you look at verse 13, the perishing man could come to him and he would help him. The widow was helped, verse 13. Interestingly enough, is he addressing some of Eliphaz's um, accusations from back in 22? Eliphaz had stated very clearly, here's your sin, Job. Job, you've asked everybody to name your sin. Well, I'm going to tell you what it is. You have oppressed the poor. You've oppressed widows. You've oppressed orphans. You haven't been kind to travelers and the stranger. And Job here is saying, that's not so. I was the type of person who helped the widow, who helped the poor, who helped those who were fatherless and who had no helper. Verse 14, he put on righteousness and justice. And in verse 16, well, I'll go ahead and read verse 15 too. I was eyes to the blind, I was feet to the lame. I was a father to the poor, and I searched out the case that I did not know. So when I didn't have all the facts or the truth in a matter, I searched out truth because I wanted to be honorable and just and righteous before God and before man too. What did you do in verse 17?
The unrighteous and save the people who would have been their target of their prey.
So
I broke the fangs of the wicked, and I snatched their prey out of those who were helpless, out of the mouths of those who were unrighteous. Plucked the victims from his teeth. So when you see the last few verses, the last 8 verses from 18 to 25, what's he saying in summary? Based on all these things that he was and that he had done.
I mean, he literally, in verse 25, he literally compares himself to a king among men. Like he had it all. Right? He was in a great position, great respect, many blessings. I think there's almost an element too of life made sense back then, right? I was good and good things happened to me, and that's what he's reminiscing on right now.
And not just a king, but what kind of king when you look at the last phrase there in verse 25.
It comforts mourners.
Yeah, a king who is benevolent and kind and wants to comfort the mourners. So that's his situation in summary, that this is what he used to be. Things were well. I was honored, regarded for my kindness and my wisdom. I was as a king and as one who comforts the mourners. But now, chapter 30. What do they do? Now they mock at me, men younger than I, whose fathers I disdain to put with the dogs of my flock. Indeed, what profit is the strength of their hands to me? Their vigor has perished. They are gaunt from want and famine, fleeing late to the wilderness, desolate and waste, who pluck mallow by the bushes and broom tree roots for their food. They were driven out from among men. They shouted at them as at a thief. They had to live in the clefts of the valleys, in caves of the earth and the rocks. Among the bushes they brayed, under the nettles they nestled. They were sons of fools, yes, sons of vile men. They were scourged from the land. So the wicked had acted in a way, and Job had judged the wicked so as to cast them out from among the people that they were oppressing. And so Job stood up for the poor and those who couldn't help themselves. And he cast these wicked men out. And so those who were wicked previously that he had cast out, now they're mocking him. All right, so he had done these things, but now they mock at me. That's the idea of these first 8 verses. They had been scourged, they had been punished. Verse 8, the latter part. But now they taunt me. Verses 9 through 15. Now I am their taunting song. Yes, I am their byword. They abhor me. They keep far from me. They do not hesitate to spit in my face. Because he has loosed my bowstring and afflicted me, they have cast off restraint before me. At my right hand the rabble arises. They push away my feet, and they raise against me their ways of destruction. They break up my path. They promote my calamity. They have no helper. They come as broad breakers. Under the ruinous storm they roll along. Terrors are turned upon me. They pursue my honor as the wind, and my prosperity has passed like a cloud. All right, so the tables have turned. Job's no longer honored. The very people he helped to set straight before are now laughing at him, taunting him, and he's being mocked. And his friends, they're not helping. Okay, so they've accused him. They've accused him. He's tried to set the matter straight. He's tried to remind them that the things that they've had to say don't always apply. Just all they had to do was look at their experiences and they would know that. What does he say in verses 16 through 19? Somebody want to read that? Yeah, please.
Now my soul is poured out within me. Days of affliction have taken hold of me. The night racks my bones, and the pain that gnaws me takes no rest. With great force my garment is disfigured. It binds me about like the collar of my tunic. God has cast me into the mire, and I have become like dust and ashes.
Okay, so the words here, I mean, how bad is it? It's not just a little headache, is it? He is in a state of total misery, uh, emotionally and physically. So my bones are pierced in me at night. There's gnawing pains. I can take no rest. It's relentless. So Job then in verses 20 through 23 says, I cry out to you, but you do not answer me. I stand up and you regard me, but you have become cruel to me. With the strength of your hand you oppose me. You lift me up to the wind and cause me to ride on it. You spoil my success, for I know that you will bring me to death and to the house appointed for all living. Who's he addressing here?
God.
All right. And so what's his address? What's he saying to God?
You've done this to me. You've cast me off, let them attack me, right? You've taken everything from me, basically.
And I've cried out, you're not answering. The only thing I can see left is for me to die, and you're just going to totally destroy me, when that happens. Okay, so he's feeling the stress of the situation. He's certainly feeling abandoned by his friends, and he's feeling abandoned by God now. Even though, as we've said throughout this class so far, that God had been there to defend Job and to uphold him as a righteous man and a righteous lifestyle. All right, let's look at the last few verses then of this chapter, verses 24 through 31. Somebody got that? Okay, Chris said first. So thank you, Kristen. We'll go with Chris.
Surely he would not stretch out his hand against a heap of ruins, if they cry out when he destroys it. Have I not wept for him who was in trouble? Has not my soul grieved for the poor? But when I looked for good, evil came to me, and when I waited for light, then came darkness. My heart is in turmoil and cannot rest. Days of affliction confront me. I go about mourning, but not in the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry out for help. I am a brother of jackals and a companion of ostriches. My skin grows black and falls from me. My bones burn with fever. My harp is turned to mourning, and my flute to the voice of those who weep.
So when he starts this section in his speech, he wants to know, considering his state, what has God got left to prove to me and continue to do this to me? Why? I mean, I'm already beaten to a pulp. There's really nothing left to do to me at this point. So I'm wrestling with this. I'm having a hard time understanding what's the point of it all. I'll gladly talk to God. I'll gladly try to reason. And he's just having a difficult time understanding why this is going on and how long it's going to last. And so he talks about his heart, that he's in a heap of ruins. His heart is in turmoil, can't rest. And he's got these days of affliction that confront him. He's a brother to jackals and ostriches, a companion to ostriches. His skin is black, it's discolored and falling off. I mean, he's basically rotting away as he tries to heal, or I don't know. Yeah, you know, it's a difficult picture to imagine. But you imagine somebody with boils that have been all over their body. I mean, they're just a state of red and black and scabs and pus, and it's just not a nice scene, is it? And so, then on top of that, of course, he has to deal with these friends. My bones burn with fever. And so, we've all had fever before, right? You can't rest when you got fever. You can't get settled. You keep having this same crazy dream over and over and over again that you can't get out and you can't wake up either. It's an awful mess when you're in that situation. And Job, we don't know exactly how long he's been going through this, but it seems like at least some time. It's not an overnight situation. Okay. Anything else on chapter 30? Yeah, Tristan.
It reminds me kind of state that we can be in sometimes where we don't know what's happening and we're suffering and I think it's revolving around us primarily. And I kind of get the sense that Job at this point is saying, what am I doing? What can I possibly do more? Why do I have to go through this? And the bigger picture in this case is God has a plan to glorify himself, and Job's a part of that plan. And it's not anything Job's done, but he's a part of that plan.
Yeah, and he's going to see that as time passes on. But right now he's struggling to see it, right? Anything else on chapter 30? Yeah, Chris.
A couple of things. In chapter 27, where he's answering them, my lips will not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. So he's telling them he's not allowed to say that he's doing wrong because he isn't. That wouldn't be honest. And then he goes from how good it was juxtaposed to how low he is now.
Yeah, total opposites. But and I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I think we've mentioned it before, but Job has said throughout, I'm not going to say I've done wrong when I know that's not true. That wouldn't be righteous there. All right, we get into chapter 31. And as chapter 31 begins, what does Job continue to maintain?
He's done no wrong.
I'm innocent. I haven't done what you've said I've done. Again, as we've tried to remind ourselves throughout, Job's never claiming through any of this that he has had sinless perfection, that's not what he's claiming. He's just claiming that I haven't done the wrong that I'm being accused of that would cause all of this disaster. That's not been my lifestyle. Okay, so chapter 31, what does he say to refute here the specific charges that were brought about by Eliphaz in chapter 22? He kind of touched on it back in chapter 29, and he does it again here. Look at I've lost my spot here. Look at verse 18 or verse 17. Or eaten morsel by myself so that the fatherless could not eat of it. I haven't done that. Verse 16. If I have kept the poor from their desire or caused the eyes of the widow to fail or eaten my morsel by myself so that the fatherless could not eat of it, but from my youth I reared him as a father, and from my mother's womb I guided the widow. If I've done those things, yeah, then I'm guilty. But guess what, Eliphaz? I haven't done those things. I've been somebody who is as a father to the orphan, to those who are poor, to the widow. I've tried to take care of them, and all you got to do, really, if you open your eyes, you'll see my past life, and you'll see what I did. This is not something he did in a shadow, is it? He was honored in the city. He was honored so that he would be able to sit in a place of honor and was beheld by others with respect and dignity. Even princes and nobles respected him. So all they had to do is look back and see what his manner of life had been, and yet they're not willing to do that. But in chapter 31, he lists lots of things here about this has been my manner of life. And if I haven't done what I say I'm doing, then I'm willing to be cursed. Let's see, what else is there here? So I've helped the fatherless, as opposed to the accusations in chapter 22, verses 8 and 9. I've helped the widow that we just read, as opposed again to what Eliphaz had presented against him. I've not cursed my enemies. I've taken in weary travelers, as opposed to Eliphaz in chapter 22 and verse 7, saying, you haven't given any relief to weary travelers. You've taken advantage of them. We got 5 minutes. So, who does Job call upon to speak if he's performed specific acts of wickedness, according to verses 35 through 37? Oh, that the Almighty would answer me. How would he approach God? How does he think he would approach God?
I'll give him an account. I'll tell him everything.
Yeah. As a prince, I would approach him. I would have confidence. I would be able to stand before God and answer any questions he has, and I would be able to basically deliver myself from this affliction that's going on, by almost saying that by my own hand I can deliver myself, because that's how righteous I know that I am. All right, is that overstating the case a little bit? Does he approach God like a prince? Not so much. But this approach again suggests that he's confident in his righteousness. And that part is true. He has been righteous. So again, this is a place where I would say he's probably overstating his case a little bit. And certainly we see that is the case, because he gets a chance to stand before God, and he does not approach him like a prince at all. All right, so he closes his final speech with his friends. He has more to say in the book, but as far as the exchanges of the speeches, he closes his final speech in verses 38 and 40 through 40 by saying what?
be cursed if I've done wrong.
Yep.
If I've done wrong, then just let the land curse me. Let thistles grow instead of crops, basically. Let thistles and weeds be there instead of barley.
Saying he's not stealing from others, stealing their food too. Verse 39.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all of
all-
this is is going back to answering the accusations I believe that Eliphaz had made. And so, again, he's right in what he's saying. He just, in this part of his response to them in his speeches, he's overstating his case. He's probably overstating his righteousness before God. All right, we're about to get to chapter 32, and I'm feeling pretty good about where we are in finishing this by the end of the month at this point. But we still got 11 chapters to go, right? 32 through 42. We're about to see Elihu come upon the scene. He's a guy that we haven't seen up to this point, but when we read what he has to say, we know he's been there all along. There's thoughts by some that Elihu is actually the writer of the book. I don't know that we have any way of proving that to be the case, but there are certain phrases that he uses that make some people believe maybe he is the writer. Elihu, the things he has to say, and go ahead and refer to lesson 6 and the questions that I have there for next week. It'll probably take us at least 2 weeks to get through 32 through 37. But Elihu does scold Job. And so upon first reading, you might get the idea that, oh, well, he's just doing the same things Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar have done. But when you look at it a little bit more closely, Elihu also scolds Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. It's obvious that he's a young man because, first of all, he says it, that at least he's younger than these older guys. And so, out of respect, he has decided not to say anything up to now. But he's like, what have I got to lose at this point? It's time to impart some wisdom as I see it. And so we'll dig into that. Anything else through chapter 31, though? All right, what's the official time? I think this may be a record for me ending a couple minutes early. But if nobody has anything else, we will just end a minute or two early.